The Unitarian Universalist Association at our 2023 General Assembly this June in Pittsburgh is considering a bylaw change that will affect the statement that most UUs know as our 7 principles. I have given out some copies, and on one side you will find those 7 principles. I'm going to be hoping that you will refer to this material I've handed out. In fact, someone asked me if we were going to have a test, and the answer is yes. So I brought pens if anybody wants to make notes, or we're going to be discussing this. You're going to be giving some feedback, and if you want to write notes on your paper or anything, let me know. I have pens available, and it's up to you. I wanted to be
I'll
make
just go
sure.
ahead and help out.
Yeah, I'll be, and just
In true to Unitarian fashion, it's a wide variety of pens, so you get to pick.
and then hopefully it's a two-way pen and it will come back this way when we're finished.
Oh, that one doesn't work. Well, that's
It's
very
like
good.
carpentry. When someone hands me a tape measure, it goes right on my belt. It's just habit. It's just habit. They have to ask me for it back. My goal this morning is to introduce you to this proposed amendment coming up to our 7 principles. I'm doing that for 2 reasons. One, very simple, you asked me to do it. So here I am this Sunday. And second, because as a newly enrolled congregation in the UUA, we are entitled to participate in this decision with 2 voting delegates to General Assembly. It will be our 2nd year that we have voted as a church. At our next congregational meeting in April, we will discuss how we want our delegates to vote on this change. That's what we are here to talk about today. Through the decades since their adoption in 1985, scores of books, countless classes, many educational resources, and thousands of sermons have been devoted to their understanding and application in our lives. So our slides now, our first slide coming up. Here is a small sampling from the UUA.org of how these...
You want the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Of how these... of things that are available to us about the principles. So we have 6 books. I brought some of my own as well. So we have a book there with purpose and principle. And next, the 7 principles in word and worship. Next, we have a chosen faith.
We have several
This,
of those.
huh?
We have owned several.
This one was from back there. It's on the shelf. This is my copy from long ago. It's been reprinted a time or 2. Next we have en Espanol. That is the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide in Spanish, also in English. And next we have Sources of Our Faith. We have next, I believe, is a children's book, My 7 Principles. So we have books. We have posters. Next, we have posters available. They also have refrigerator magnets. We have bookmarks. Next, I went and got my bookmarks. Some of these are made by churches I've attended, so they're personalized with the name on the back. This one has the mission statement. And so I didn't know I had so many until I fanned my bookshelf. And we have wallet cards that Kirby's holding up back there. We keep a supply of them on hand. You can go to the next slide. So what I plan to do this morning is offer you a brief history of how our principles were shaped, and then I'll introduce you to the latest incarnation. In the year 2000, our denominational magazine, UU World, published an article called Shared Values, written by Warren R. Ross. This article is the source for my history lesson today. Quote, There's another one, our 7 principles. There are few issues on which UUs can agree with one another. Are we a denomination or merely an association of independent congregations? Do we call the places we gather for worship churches or meeting halls or fellowships? In fact, do we worship? These are all perennial subjects for debate, but few questions cause as much discomfort as what to say when asked, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? After all, we don't all believe the same thing. But even as we vehemently reject any creed, we seem to be forever searching for some verbal formula about which all, or at least most, of us can say, yeah, that's what I more or less believe. End of quote from Moore and Ross. So the point is, no one would revere our principles as our stone tablets handed down from on high. They have been with us for a long time, but they are not the first, nor presumably the last word on the subject. We are, after all, UUs. Disagreeing is what we do best.
Young growing God.
Young growing gods, old ancient gods. And how did we get to be UUs? In 1961, 2 Christian denominations, Unitarian and Universalist, decided to join forces to become the UUA. That's association. And that's another history lesson. But in preparation for that, we jumped ahead.
Did I? You started talking about this. Okay.
But in preparation for that merger, articles of association were formed, debated, amended, and approved. Our name, which came first, the units or the universe? Our bylaws, leadership, religious education programs, all of this was formed for that merger. And so in 1960, as you see, the following 6 principles were formed. Let's take a look at them and tell me what you notice. Now, this is going to be over 2 slides, so we can look at one and we can take notes if you want. We'll go back and forth from one to another if we can do that, or just take the time to look. These were the 1960 6 principles, not 7, 6 principles. It's on the back of one of your sheets. The 1-page sheet has the 60s on the one side and the 85 on the other. Now, I want you to look at this, and I want to tell me what you notice. What jumps out at you about this? Anything at all? Anything that you see?
Let's read it first.
Yeah, just look at it.
Lots of words.
Huh?
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of
Say
words.
that to start.
Anything about any of those words?
Judeo-Christian is very telling of their history.
Judeo-Christian.
Specifically.
Yes, the Judeo-Christian heritage.
But you see the roots of our current 7 principles. In
Okay. You see some of the roots in there? Some hints to where we're going?
Free and disciplined search for truth, worth of every human personality,
Universal truth.
universal truths, or, yeah.
Okay.
You want me to go to the next slide?
Yes, everybody got to look at it? You can go to the next one, because like I say, we have copies on paper too.
That second one was kind of the root of our 6 sources or whatever statement.
Yeah.
The one that said like prophets or whatever.
Judeo-Christian.
Yeah, but
Well, yeah, the
it
prophecy.
started out broader than that.
Oh, uh-huh.
Specified in it.
Yeah.
great prophets and teachers of humanity.
I think I left you a copy back
They're
there.
all very positive. To implement, to serve, to encourage,
Yeah.
Good
etc.
point.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Now, what about, someone already pointed out the Judeo-Christian heritage. Mr. Ross said in his UU World article that this original statement of our purposes had been a matter of such heated debate that it nearly derailed the merger. And this was before the two groups even came together to discuss it. Each group, the Unitarians and the Universalists, met independently at the same time to hammer these out before bringing them together. And it almost derailed the merger. Such things as including the phrase, love to God and love to man, with the emphasis on the first noun, putting God in there. A reference to our Judeo-Christian heritage. It took an all-night, all-day session for the compromises, including a critical change from our heritage to the heritage. They changed the word from our to the in order to be hammered out and accepted. Now, jump to the late 1970s. There were new issues with these original statements of purpose. There was a flowering interest in spirituality. This is the time that I came into Unitarian Universalism. And the great saying, the great thing for everybody was, we need more spirituality in our faith. And the statement didn't have it. UU President Eugene Pickett said, liberal words like freedom, reason, tolerance, quote, describe a process for approaching the religious depths, but they say nothing of the depths themselves. If we are ever, he said, to speak to a new age, we must supplement our seeking with some profound religious finds. F-I-N-D-S, finds. Seek and you shall find. This has become a common UU theme. We seem to value the search more than the discovery. But even more important than defining what we are is answering the question who we are. Inclusiveness. Over many years, said Ross, women had been growing unhappy with the blatantly sexist language of the original bylaws. And not just in here, but hymn books, bylaws, everything. So look again, we have love to God and love to man. Emphasis this time on the second noun. The dignity of man. Brotherhood, justice, and peace. Men of goodwill. Right there. So, in 1981, a non-sexist revision of the principles and purposes, drafted by various women's groups who were the main impetus behind our new principles, were presented to GA. Immediately, of course, it caused a stir. Christians thought, and you can look at our new principles there, we're going to go into them. In fact, I think you could flip and you'll see the first on the next slide. So, Christians thought they were being written out of our new principles.
You ready for the next one?
You can? Yeah. it will show ministers question eliminating the word God. So we did what we always do. Formed a committee. But the 4-year process of developing these bylaws paid off and resulted in this. The concerns from the Christians and ministers, no God, no Christian, led to a suggestion from Reverend Harry Holer to divide the statement into 2 parts. The principles you see here, and the next slide, the 5 sources. And so you have Jewish and Christian.
Right.
You have God.
Right.
Respond to God's love by forming. All right. Make everybody happy.
Important to note, at the time, it was 5 sources.
5
5.
5
sources.
sources.
So let me find where we are, and I'll. Thanks to the open and inclusive process, the same one being followed with our newest revisions, the first vote to adopt our principles in 1984 was nearly unanimous.
Whoa.
And at the 1985 GA, it came up for a second vote, required for bylaw changes. This is what we must do. Same thing's going on now. And passed with only 1 dissenting vote.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. In 1995, the only revision to these principles that has happened took place at GA in Spokane, Washington. You can go right here. I was there. This was my first General Assembly. This was not unanimous. This is the 6th source, earth-centered traditions. This was argued and debated all General Assembly long. It was not without animosity. It passed eventually by 6 votes after multiple recounts and revotes.
Why can you be against this? I don't understand.
Well, I don't want to get into too much of it because we want to talk about the new ones, but I can say that one of the main things was not that this happens, but that it was not one of our sources. Because this is a list of the sources of our faith, and there were people who claimed we didn't draw from earth-centered traditions. You know, we've added them, but they weren't part of our history, like Jewish and Christian and words and deeds of women and men and all of that. It was a great. There were people who said, if we don't pass this, I will resign my membership. There were people who said, if we pass this, I will resign my membership. It was quite fun. We often hear the term, let's go to the next one. We often hear the term principles and purposes when referring to actually the principles and the sources. The purpose of the UUA, as seen here, comes directly after the principles in the bylaws. This is also being considered as part of the change. But this is the part we never hear about or talk about. Sometimes we'll say, I do it, sometimes I'll say the principles and purposes. And I'm really talking about the sources. So any other questions or comments before we get to the star attraction, the headline act?
I'll just say, I think it's very just interesting that the shift to the 7 principles that were basically the various women's committees and organizations are the ones that basically went through and everybody agreed with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point.
It already asked you all.
They didn't at first, but the women did such a fantastic job of, a man would say, well, how is this, when we say man, all mankind, you're included.
Right.
Combination line, yes.
But yes, we can be trained. So why do we need a review of these principles? Susan Frederick Gray, president of the UUA, said, quote, in the mid-2010s, the ground began to shift again. So you've got the women and all of that coming out in the 70s, much as it did in response to the women's movement, 2010 at time. The emergence of Black Lives Matter, very key. The election of Donald Trump with his racist and misogynist campaign, and the urgent calls to confront white supremacy culture, interestingly, in our own movement. The UUA has been hammering on this like crazy. Before we look at others, let's look at ourselves. Our own blind to our privileges kind of thing. All of these compelled UUs to ask questions about whether our principles today reflected fully who we are and who we need to be. So there's your explanation of why we're where we are. Also, it's in our bylaws that every 15 years we're supposed to review this. By 2017 General Assembly, there were multiple grassroots efforts to change our principles. The first was overwhelmingly adopted. To change prophetic women and men, that's in the sources, to prophetic people, to move beyond gender binary. That's a big thing. Big issue for us. There was also a proposal to change the first principle from the inherent worth and dignity of every person to the inherent worth and dignity of all beings. That one was tabled for various reasons. Discussions of the proposed eighth principle, next slide, were going on at the time. This is the one that we discussed when we first received it. So you'll see it come up, I think.
There were 7.
It's coming up.
Right.
There was that lone one, 8.
All right, let's go to the next one. Maybe it's on the next one.
Okay, it's in red.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here we go.
there it is.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo! Little motion there. The eighth principle, according to Dr. Gray, Frederick Gray, quote, recognize the need to dismantle systems of oppression, calling us from aspiration to action. I just thought it was a rambling, verbose, protracted, loquacious, tautological, long-winded word pothole that didn't match the eloquence of our principles. But that's just me.
No, it is not just you.
No, we all said it.
Yeah. This one is no longer under consideration. It has been entirely and very dramatically reworked. And you will see into what if you look at that handout that I gave, that 3-page handout, or these slides. So let's see what we've got.
You ready for next one?
Yeah.
We're back to here.
So
Keep-
advance past that.
Next.
There you
Here
go.
we are. This represents the old, what the amendment wants to remove and what it wants to replace. I particularly love the image
Yeah,
there.
really nice.
I
gotta say, that image is
gotta say, this is a whole lot different than that eighth principle
Yeah,
deal.
that's like a Venn diagram of love there. And it's
Yeah.
just like, wow.
And imagine that is in the bylaws. That's rather poetic, isn't it?
Yes. Go back to hieroglyphics.
I'm so impressed I had to give you a color copy of it. So, and what you will find around it are descriptions of each of the 7 words, many of which might sound familiar. Interdependence, justice, equity. And then, of course, there's 3. This is the really big new word.
That's the
That's
one.
what they're emphasizing and hammering on. That's what I sent out to everybody a 26-page review, which you can find at uua.org, that says that the very first thing is, we stand for love. We represent love. We consider ourselves an organization of love, and that's not in our principles. So what you have, the purposes, is the very first thing on page 1. I told you that they were reflecting a change, and you can compare them and see there's a little bit of change there. Let's go back to that. Can you back it up to that first page?
That one?
So, okay, that's go ahead then.
Go forward?
Yeah. To the next page.
Like that.
Yeah. I was looking to see if they had, this doesn't include, I guess,
Back
the,
up to the first one.
is it
Back
on
up
the
to
first one?
Look on the right-hand side.
Where the
Values
purpose
and
is?
covenant, love is the power that holds us together, interdependence. Is that
Yeah,
what
there's
you're
the
talking
love stuff.
about? Mhm.
Love, 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 love. And then what you find is, rather than the 7 principles, this is catchy, one-word stuff, and then they have little paragraphs that explain each of them. Now, you'll also notice as you read them, like Kevin said earlier, the 1960s had a hint of the 1985 direction of our principles. The 1985 hints at the direction of these new principles. Some of the words that are still in there.
I would actually say these are values.
Values. Right. Now I'm going to shut up and let y'all look it over, talk about it, reflect on it. Tell me what you think. Tell us what you think, what you notice.
I'm so sucked into that graphic.
I know.
It's gorgeous.
It took my scowl away from that 8th principle.
Yeah.
I am
I said-
sorry, but my one question, is this colorblind inclusive?
Oh! There's your one no vote. There's always someone.
I just want to point out to those who are members, you should have just recently receiving your UU World, and even inside here, you'll see about midway through, there's the purpose and covenant, and it's the values approach, and they basically give you a link to online where this whole,
That's the newest.
that's just showed up day before yesterday.
They have.
Those colors are really the chakra colors, you know.
Oh, really? Okay. And actually, I have a very direct answer to your question. The answer is yes, it is. And this is why. Image description.
Okay.
They put right under it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
The interdependence is orange, the equity is red. So yes, it's colorblind inclusive. It describes the image. Right under the image itself, right here. Image of a chalice with, this is misprinted, an overlay, A-N, of the word love. I didn't notice that. Somebody will point that out at GA if not.
I wonder how much discussion came into which color was which word.
I can't imagine, but you will find in that thing that Kevin just showed you, if you go online, that 26 page, a lot of that, they introduce the members of this committee. And the picture of the people in the committee, it's quite a group of people. They're young people, female, male, I should say gender, non-gender binary. Smiling, all smiling, and this is after they've been working for a couple of years. So this really got my attention that they have done some tremendous work. Whether or not we want this to replace, and I need to say this, this doesn't remove the principles. This doesn't say the principles can't be a part. I mean, people, every church has them on their walls, on their bookmark. That's why I showed you all that. They're ingrained into who we are. Our church can do anything we want with the principles. I mean, not anything we want, but as far as using them. It doesn't do away with them. It takes them out of the bylaws. And it replaces them with this. So, And they get their description from the 8th principle. Section C24, inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, etc., etc., etc. What they wanted is something that said more than, here's a nice thought, here's a nice idea. Traditionally, it's always been said that the Unitarians are the head people and the Universalists are the heart people. And so what they're trying to do is say, this is all about doing. It's all about acting. And that's why they've been hammering it home. That's why we've had some very contentious presidential things going on in our movement. That may be behind why there's only one candidate this year. I haven't been explained that. Maybe this is a new, oh, let's don't be disagreeable thing. I don't know what it is. I want to find out. But there has been a tremendous amount of effort in our association. I would say almost bend over backward for minority, traditionally underprivileged and abused people in our society.
How big is that group that decides on all this?
Whoever attends GA, it's like people voting on having me as minister, whoever shows up.
But do you know how many were involved with this?
In this,
Yeah.
putting it together, I think there were about 9 on the committee.
Okay.
And what happens with anything like this? The way the GA works is somebody proposes something, it goes to GA is our business work. So that's where we vote on changes and all of that. So somebody proposes something. It goes up, and it happens in a lot of different ways. There's amendments. There are things called actions of immediate witness. So let's say there's something going on in society that's so important. How about when they were taking children away from the refugee parents? We don't have time to vote on that for 2, 3, 4 years and write out some fancy thing. That's voted on at General Assembly and put into motion immediately. It's called an action. So what it does is it points out a problem and it points out ways to offer solutions. And it sends it out to the congregations if it's approved and says, this is what we agreed to. We, meaning the congregations. And this is what we hope that you can do. Teach classes, do social actions, that kind of thing. Study these books or these articles. There are other things that are not actions of immediate witness that are called, I knew I'd forget it when I got to it. But there are, let's say, something wants to be done, a change of a bylaw or something. It's introduced, it's voted on. If it's approved, there is this 4-year back and forth process with the congregations. So the people that put it up will write out proposals, send them to the congregations, invite us to have religious education classes, discussions, board meetings, and talk about this and give our feedback. And it's a back and forth, give and take. They take the information from the congregations, they review it, analyze it, rework it, reword it, adjust it, amend it, vote on it again, send it out to the congregation, and this is the process that goes on. So that's what's been happening with this. We're now in the 3rd year. It was 2.5 years when it went before the UUA board in January, 3 months ago. And they offered their amendments. And this spring, in March, in February, there were online discussions about this. And we as a church could have participated in that. And they'll have a Zoom meeting or whatever. They'll say, do you have any questions? Do you have any amendments? And those are voted on. Now that it's set, and this is the final or semifinal, it's going to go before GA in June, and there will be amendments offered there, and they will be voted on. And that will become the final statement. They'll write it up and vote on it next year.
And I will point out that at General Assembly, for all those who have never had the chance to go, I really encourage it, because not only is it the business stuff like this, but I mean, if you think about this business is at the heart of our
Right.
religious practice also.
This is who we are.
Yeah, they are also really wonderful worship services and stuff like that. And it's really inspiring to see how something like this will be brought up. There will be 3 microphones, 3 different areas of the auditorium. One would be if you would like to speak in favor, one if you would like to speak not in favor, one if you want to basically bring up a point of
Order.
procedure or order.
Procedure.
And so then the moderator will sit there, okay, we're going to take it from this microphone, and that person will have a chance to speak, and then there's a timer, so you don't filibuster.
Yeah.
And then another person
Robert's
will
Rules of
sit-
Order.
And they go back and forth, and then somebody can come up and say, hey, point of order, I think that we're, not being in covenantal behavior with the way that we're speaking to each other. Something. I mean, it's about as democratic a process as I think you can see.
With 2,000 to 4,000 people.
Yes, and so that can be messy sausage,
Yeah.
but it's amazing to see how
De-
people
Yeah.
do actually sit there and speak to each
And
other.
those people are all members of a congregation, or
Yes.
are there also friends? And
Only
Only
delegates.
delegates.
Oh,
Delegates
okay, only
can
delegates.
speak at the,
Okay.
yes.
The other thing that I really enjoy is there are, shoot, what do I wanna call them? They're sessions. of-
Breakouts.
All kinds of workshops.
Workshops.
Workshop.
All
They're
kinds of
workshops,
Yeah.
bunches, and they also have this huge choir, which is
Yeah.
fabulous.
The worship services are you'd think you were in the Mormon Tabernacle. I mean, the quality of the sermons, the quality of the music, everything is perfect. They have dramas on stage, they have dance, they have sort of like putting this into the bylaws. There is art, it's like I've been to a few large UU churches. This will raise your faith in UU more than anything. Because all of a sudden you realize, wow, there's thousands of us. We're not alone in our little church. So it's a fantastic. Now this year, ever since COVID, they've made this available virtually as well as in person. But anyone who's in Pittsburgh can go to the Sunday service for no charge. It's open to the public. Thousands of people. When they held it in Boston, it was the largest I've ever seen, like 6,000 people.
And
It's
normally the offering that day goes to a local.
The
charity.
offering always goes like we do to a local thing. There's always some action that takes place at General Assembly. In fact, we pick places. They picked Arizona back when Arizona was a hot spot so that they could protest what the
Yeah.
people were doing over there. They held it down in Fort Lauderdale when something was going on there.
The kids, it was.
Yeah, they
Those
had
are
that.
the migrants,
The migrants.
Yeah.
the kids being held.
So,
They held it in New Orleans when it was all focused on racial justice.
yeah. And so you get to see cool places. I've been to Cleveland, St. Louis, where we met, out west. It's a wonderful opportunity. There are discounted prices. If you go in early, you get a discount. If you register to do volunteer work while you're there, you can get a discount. If you only go to the business sections, you get a discount. There's even, I think, online voting without having to pay anything this year, as I understand. And it is expensive. And I've always had issues with a few things, such as, why are they holding this in places where there are $250 hotel rooms when people can't afford it? But where are you going to hold
Right.
2,000 people?
Normally, local Unitarian congregations will have host families that are also like, so that, we did
That's
that.
what we did.
And they're often in places like where there's good bus or transit service. It's been in Seattle where you can stay out at an $80 or $70 motel or something.
And I would say that each of the ones I've been to, I think, at the very beginning, one of the very first services they do is a whole statement of thanks and recognition of indigenous peoples from that area.
Yep.
you know, that basically may not even be represented any longer in that space, because they've all been, but you know, like, you know, who is on this land
Yeah.
historically? And so they'll do a recognition of that. They try to be extremely, like, inclusive as you can get. They'll have, the bathrooms will be gendered and non-gendered, and you know, you have to
Yep.
pick whichever
Yep.
one you're comfortable with.
Yeah, Seattle, they just, you know, sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than permission, and I recall that they just took handmade signs and put them over the bathroom doors. They didn't say, you know, is it legal to make a bathroom, you know, whatever it's called, the right word, unisex or whatever. They just.
But they still made it so that you, if you wanted to go to a
Yeah.
gendered one, you can, but you can also use it.
There is a
Try and
tremendous
make it-
place somewhere where they're selling stuff. So you get vendors making this, making that. You can buy those bells that you do that with. You can buy robes.
How many days does it?
5 days. It's the 21st through the 25th. It always ends on a Sunday, starts on a Wednesday.
Yeah, but they'll have like people doing jewelry that's UU themed and, yeah, just.
I know it's quarter after. Everybody's just having so much fun.
And how is the food?
But we have another
How
meeting.
is the food in those 5 days? Is there
It's fine.
any eating going on?
Yeah.
They normally have like.
In the vendors, there is food available.
They're
It's,
gonna have vegetarian.
They'll have food courts and,
Oh,
they'll
yeah.
definitely vegan.
you're kind of on your own with food. It's not included, but they do have vendors
They
and very.
cater to it.
It's really a tremendous opportunity. And so mainly, I was hoping for feedback, but if, I know it's all new to you.
Yeah.
So my closing words are, the majority, this year is a majority vote. Yes or no, we carry this on and vote next year. And if it passes, the final proposal will require a 2/3 majority to become adopted.
Okay.
I invite you to explore it further as you wish and attend our quarterly meeting in July, prepared to let your voice be heard. Thanks for your cooperation. Blessings. I love you.